Where, oh, where to begin with Wrath, Aeon of Ruin? Well, first things first, this is a 3D Realms published retro-styled FPS, and if you're thinking it's got a little bit of a Quake-style flavor to it, that is because this is, in fact, running on Quake 1 tech. I know, right? It's looking good, it's looking great even, and I guess this is a benefit of familiarity with an engine over the years, because the developer behind this, Kill Pixel, is comprised of, what I've been told, are Quake scene veterans, and quite frankly, it shows. It's there in the enemy designs, it's there in the construction of the levels, it's in the art direction and certainly the sound design that's present here, but also present in a few new ideas, such as the save system, which does not allow you to freely save as you choose. Instead, you have to make use of artifacts acquired throughout the course of a level, which you then spend as you use in order to plonk down a save point, causing you to think a little bit more critically about where and when you take that vital save slot. How far ahead you're willing to stray, however, will come down entirely to your own personal preference, and of course your aptitude with the weaponry of Wrath. Speaking of which, the first gun that I've managed to acquire here is, of course, the Coach Gun. Primary fire spits out a fairly regular stream of bullets, whereas the secondary fires 3 bullets simultaneously, obviously taking a hit to the fire rate as a result. As with most early game weapons, you'll find that the effectiveness of the Coach Gun here is largely reserved for lesser enemies. Regardless, however, I find it a pleasingly chunky handgun, and the firing animation, what with those spinning barrels, is just supremely satisfying to watch. In the event of beefier enemies, and of course with the easier dispatching of lesser ones, a much beefier gun is required. All hail the shotgun. Good grief if that isn't an extremely boomy boomstick, but much like the Coach Gun, this also comes replete with an alt fire function, one that, as of yet, I've had a little trouble trying to figure out the usefulness of. I mean, sure, it does indeed allow you to ricochet rounds off the walls, potentially striking at enemies around blind corners, but this is done at the cost of much increased bullet spread, and I imagine reduced damage dealing, whereas personally, I much prefer the pragmatism of rocking up and blasting them with the full force of both barrels. Next up we have the, quite frankly, metal as all fuck Fang Spitter. This is a weapon that's quite reminiscent of the likes of the chain gun, nail gun, quite good at range, quite good at lesser, lower HP enemies in terms of wiping them off the face of the fucking earth. The secondary, however, is where it really shines because, oh boy, is that a boomy alt. That is both barrels going simultaneously, obviously not spitting fangs quite as fast as the primary, and as you can imagine, dealing a heftier amount of damage. I'd have to say my favorite aspect of the Fang Spitter, though, is what happens when you use the ult on this particular enemy here, because it essentially stun locks the damn thing and forces it to jig about with its pain animation in a fashion that I personally find hellishly amusing and something I almost never miss an opportunity to inflict. The Retcher is an appropriately disgusting weapon. It fires acidic cysts, which can be found growing on certain enemies or puking up from the mouths of others. It is essentially a grenade launcher in function, at least with the primary. Detonation on impact. If you miss, it'll bounce off walls and surfaces, allowing you to do some sweet ricochet shots. The secondary, however, fires a lob of 3, allowing you to cover a greater surface area, but at the cost of what feels like reduced damage dealing. Another sacrifice here is that the ult does not allow you to ricochet those rounds, so you're going to have to be a little bit more precise. In either case, if you've got something big, nasty, and with a significant health pool to take down, this is definitely going to do the job quickest out of all of them, though you may want to stand back from that acidic splash. Funnily enough, up to this point, all of these weapons have been acquired through the first available level here in Wrath, which is known as the Undercrofts. It's one of 2 that are currently playable in this early access form, and it does a real good job of introducing you to the level design, the style of encounters you'll be dealing with, and generally the pace of exploration. There's a lot of real nice, intricately designed level here, and it seems typically broken up into large chunks, each of which contains multiple shortcuts allowing you to loop through and reinvestigate areas previously visited in order to pursue certain tantalizing looking secrets, and all while facilitating a fairly smooth and fast-paced style of combat. If anything, a lot of the visual stylings of the Undercrofts here gave me a little bit of a Dark Souls throwback. A lot of graves, a lot of tombs, a lot of just deserted undead decay. It gave me that same kind of vibe, and the soundtrack certainly adds to that on top. There's nothing OTT or bombastic here, it's all very atmospheric scene-setting stuff, and the more I think about it, the more I kind of enjoy that vibe. There's a part of me that wants nothing but wailing guitars and drums in the background while I slaughter my enemies, but we can't always have that. Sometimes you need a little bit of a change of pace. If I'm not mistaken, the Undercrofts here also plays host to, I'm pretty sure, the entire available enemy roster so far. It's a nice way of introducing them. They are doled out quite steadily during the course of the level, the escalation of weapons going hand in hand with the escalation of enemies, and by the end of it, you will be reasonably well versed in how best to deal with each and every one of them. Of course, it's going to throw some interesting combinations at you. You'll get some close quarters with the cyst throwers, where you really do not want to be up close and personal with them when they go pop. And very occasionally the map will also throw one of these great big feckers at you. Apologies, I haven't really committed the bestiary to memory as of yet, so big fecker is the best you're gonna get, but I think that accurately sums up this thing, and entertainingly, it just sent me into full-fledged panic mode the first time round I encountered it, just wheeling backwards trying to find a way to get out of its range. Something else that this map introduces you to is its range of supplementary items. It's not just the save artifacts that you'll have use of, but also a variety of other bits and bobs. First of which being the Life Siphon. This is a really useful combat item. You can pop it just before a big battle, and it will essentially recoup health for every enemy you kill. Naturally, the bigger the enemy is, the more health you're going to recoup, and it's a nice way of keeping yourself topped up during the course of a particularly hefty section, and yeah, not dying basically. You don't want to do that. Another interesting combat item that you can get here is the Cruel Aegis. This gives you invincibility, which sounds great, but the trade-off is it reduces your health to 10. So this is best used in a situation where you know that you can get through the lion's share of enemies before that power-up expires, because otherwise, if there's something hefty left over, it's going to make you very easy pickings indeed. If anything, the implementation of the power-ups here so far is really encouraging. I really like the idea of trade-offs to go along with power-ups, having you think twice about the situation rather than just saying, screw it, let's hit the I win button. But yeah, you can color me very interested to see what they'll have up their sleeves for future updates, how those power-ups will affect the texture of the gameplay. The second level you'll have access to here is the Maya, and if I'm not mistaken, you have free access to this at the start, so you can choose between the Undercrofts or this to begin. The Undercrofts is more of a natural starting point, but I'd be very intrigued to see how the gameplay is affected by you not having access to all the weapons that you've acquired during the course of the Undercrofts, because yeah, I can see this opening being a massive pain in the ass to get through. Alright, so this is pretty goddamn cool. I went back and started a new save file because I couldn't shake my own curiosity just to see what it would be like if I picked this level as my starting level. As it happens, the map does indeed compensate for a player picking it first, which, if we're going to be honest, makes perfect sense. If you're going to open up an entire suite of levels for the player and say, go nuts, we're not going to restrict you, of course there's going to have to be some kind of concession made, but it's just really nice to see it put into practice. And this level does feature the same kind of curve that you experience during the Undercrofts, that steady progression through the levels and the enemy types as you get deeper into it. If I had to describe the Maya, I would describe it as appropriately swampy. At the very least, during these overground sections. But if there's something that Wrath does exceedingly well, both here and in the Undercrofts, it's with providing the player these rather large open areas, affording a lot of freedom of movement, freedom of combat, and all while, once again, using Quake 1 tech. I keep having to remind myself of that fact because look at it. It's glorious. Happily, the more claustrophobic sections of the mire play just as nicely as the above-ground sections, taking advantage of some real nice level design that snakes you through a labyrinth of waterways before ultimately leading you back up the other side of the very swamp you descended from. It's all very satisfying to experience, and not without a fair degree of challenge either. I'd say that this level certainly gave me a lot more food for thought when it came to how often I'd be plonking down my soul tethers, but even then I couldn't help but feel that I was oversupplied in that regard. But that might be a consequence of the difficulty I was playing on, with this simply being normal. Maybe the amount of them provided is reduced on hard. I think the most encouraging thing I could probably tell you about Wrath at this point, and bear in mind this is still in early access, is that it feels like it's doing that era of FPS shooters justice. Eminently so. If there were any significant drawbacks I could think of regarding Wrath as it currently stands, it would be the fact that there's only 2 levels currently available for me to play, because once I was done with them, I immediately wanted more. So much so that I was happy to go back through and play these levels over again. Mainly so I could grab less derpy gameplay footage, but regardless, I was more than happy to do so. So yeah, consider me impressed, very much so. And remember, this is just on the basis of 2 available levels, and of course the hub level, which you can explore here, which admittedly is really goddamn pretty. I really love what they've done with this place, because not only does it give you the portals that lead you to the levels themselves, but it also gives you an idea of what the level is going to tonally be like, with a little bit of a aesthetic visual preview before you reach the portal itself, which I just think is a really, really fine touch. But yeah, if the rest of Wrath is anything as good as what's currently available here, and let's be honest, what's available here is a really strong opening salvo of levels, I reckon we're going to be in for a pretty damn good time with this one. Unless it shits the bed, but hey, I'm hoping that's going to be very, very unlikely. No pressure. Oh, and before I forget, I'll be very intrigued to see what they do with the wrist blade, because the alt allows you to charge it and then fling yourself forward mid-air, allowing you to cross a greater gap than you normally would do otherwise. So that could lead to some interesting exploration in future levels. It's certainly been employed already to a pretty entertaining effect in what's currently available. In any case, if you find yourself enamored by what you've witnessed of Wrath, Aeon of Ruin today, you'll find the link to the Steam store page in the description below. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand yourself, maybe you'd like to see your name in the credits, maybe you'd like to gain early access to my videos before anyone else, heck, maybe you just enjoy the smell of burning money. If that's the case, you'll find the link to my Patreon page also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and until next time, this has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.